The story kicks off with this kid who got way too full of himself and tried to take on 5 people all by himself and, unsurprisingly, ended up getting his ass handed to him. Still, he was stoked because he'd saved his bag. And get this, a massive dude named Chiaki noticed the whole thing. It was just a bag with a snack that Sura, our hero, adores. So Chiaki marches over and starts telling him why he's even there because really, Sura was just waiting for some girl to show up. But the poor guy waited an entire day and she never appeared. Not wasting any time, Chiaki immediately switched gears and offered to teach Sura some martial arts. Of course, as if that wasn't enough, a toy airplane suddenly comes flying in, smacks him on the head, and knocks him out for an impromptu afternoon nap. And that was the end of day 1. The very next day, it's Sura's first day at Kozo High and he's buzzing with excitement because the gym is empty, meaning he's got free reign to train. That freedom didn't last long though. 4 dudes as tall as the door barge in and are totally baffled. What the heck is an elementary school kid doing in our high school? And they weren't wrong, Sura's super short. They haul him off to the clubroom and start grilling him with questions about where, when, and how he ended up at their school. The club leader, a guy named Haru, even notices that Sura's sneakers are filthy and demands he chuck them. But Sura clings to those sneakers like treasure because they were a precious gift from his mom, who used to play basketball herself. Haru seizes the chance to warn him that if he keeps training with those sneakers on, they'll toss him in the river. So they lock him up in that room while Sura makes the best of it by cleaning basketballs until the school day finally ends and hunger hits. He digs through his bag, hoping to find a snack, when suddenly he spots a hole in the wall. It turns out that hole leads right into the girls' clubroom. Yep, classic move by the boys, peeking while the girls are changing. Out of nowhere, Chiaki shows up again with another hole of a view from way up high. We're all left wondering where the guy came from, especially since the door's locked. Turns out he had rolled in early that morning waiting for the girls to arrive for training, but he dozed off in a locker. He's a second-year student, by the way. While he was watching his club buddies bicker with Sura, when Sura asked why they acted like they hated basketball, Chiaki shot back with, "Do those 4 even like it at all?" Chiaki, a regular at the club, not really to train, but mostly to ogle the girls, then told Sura to scram from that club because it was pointless, especially given his short stature. But Sura's convinced that hating basketball is what makes him equal to the tall dudes. "Is getting on their nerves just for playing ball really worth it to you, Sura?" asked Chiaki. "Yes," Sura replied. So they agreed. Chiaki tried to leave, but the door was locked, no sweat. One swift kick to the door smashed it open. They then headed to the gym where Sura spotted that girl, the very same girl who was changing and who goes by Madoka. Chiaki asked permission to come in and play for a bit, but Madoka sidled up to Sura and warned him about the rough and tumble basketball club guys. But it was too late. Within moments, those 4 show up and start hassling Sura. Just like they warned him earlier. If you dare enter the gym and play, they'll grab your ragged sneakers and chuck them in the river, even though those sneakers are his most prized possession from his mom. Sura would rather die than lose those kicks. The reality, though, is that Sura's so weak compared to those giants he has to resort to another trick, trying to yank one guy's pants down. Haru keeps insulting him and even threatens to burn his sneakers outside. Then Chiaki steps in, and boom, a showdown erupts between Chiaki and Haru. Fed up with all the crap? Sura yells at the top of his lungs. "Why the hell don't you guys just play basketball? You're all in a basketball club, but you never play. You don't play because it's tiring, which makes 0 sense. You can't make birds fly if there's no sky." Sura then recalls the promise he made to his mom and challenges them to a basketball match. If he wins, they'll let him join the club. Chiaki fires back that they haven't even trained, and there's no way they'd beat Sura in a one-on-one. But Sura isn't thinking one-on-one, he's cool with a 5-on-1 matchup. Crazy Sura is ready to challenge the entire club. And guess what? That challenge worked. It riled up Haru's crew, and they accepted the dare. However, Chiaki wasn't going to play himself. He insisted that Madoka step in for him. At first, Madoka's friends refused, but then Sura approached and pleaded with her to play seriously. The challenge was set. It ends once Sura dribbles past 5 defenders and sinks a basket. The whistle blasts, Sura snatches the ball and he charges straight toward Haru. He starts weaving left and right until he opts to cut through the right side, but Haru predicts his move. Not to worry though, Sura's instincts are way faster. The mischievous kid fakes so hard that Haru's left dumbfounded, letting Sura slip past him and speed toward the other end, where 2 defenders await. He slows just a bit, implying a 3-pointer might be in the cards, but then like a cool breeze, he slips past them, ducks through like a sneaky duck, and rockets for the basket. The last defender leaps up to block his shot, but the filthy punks on defense deliver a direct airborne kick. The fools thought the challenge was over, but Haru declared he'd play 10 more rounds. Madoka started hatching her own plan, but her teammates pitied Sura since he's so short and had his only advantage, his ability to cut through defenses, snatched away. Sura remembered his mom's words telling him not to blame his height for not scoring. Instead, he dribbled and dragged every defender into one corner of the court, taking his mom's advice on making the most of his short stature. He charged, then stepped back 2 paces before leaping to launch a spectacular shot that swished in perfectly. His explosive moves in the opening moments had caught everyone's attention, so naturally, they cranked up their defense in the middle, and that was exactly his plan, setting up his own zone to fool them. That nasty trio eventually admitted defeat and joined Sura, but from that day on, they became the club's minions. Then Haru clapped them in the face because this was just the first round of a 10-round showdown. The day ended with Sura winning all 10 rounds of the challenge, making a promise to them and playing basketball like a boss. The very next day, Sura tells the club members to go practice, but that's a no-go for them. They claim it's forbidden and insist he finish his schoolwork first. They even make him clean the room before they'll actually follow his orders and head out to practice. Sura goes along with it good-naturedly, but as evening falls and he finally finishes, he heads for the exit. When he opens the door, he runs smack into Chiaki carrying a ridiculously long stick. Yeah, this dude actually shows up with a stick outfitted with a hook, which he's using to snatch the girl's underwear from the other side. The question is, how's he gonna get that hook through such a tiny hole? Easy, this pervert has his twisted methods. One of his tricks was drilling a hole under the wall just big enough for the hook to slide through. Sura tells him the stick isn't long enough, it needs a few extra centimeters. Chiaki wasn't totally convinced at first, but once he rigged it up, he had to admit Sura was right. He ended up taping a ruler to extend it. During all this, Sura asks him if he's ever played basketball with Haru because he'd noticed Haru's skills in the last challenge. Chiaki just shrugs and says everyone in life has a breaking point. He wraps up his little spiel and bounces. But here's the twist. The girls had just finished their training and gone into the locker room, and the catastrophe is that the rope with the hook is still strung between the 2 rooms. Somehow, Sura manages to yank it back, then heads off to a late practice session, where Madoka spots him in the gym. Meanwhile, Chiaki tells Haru that Sura's got a killer sense of depth, a trait every clutch shooter must have. Their convo gets cut off when some wing players from another school, Maru High, bust in. They've been hauled up to the bridge for a lesson they'd never forget. After ending that scuffle, they all return to the club room. It's super late when Haru hears some noise in the gym and is shocked to discover Sura still training at that hour. Haru asks, "How many shots have you taken?" And Madoka tells him that Sura's already shot over 1,000 baskets. He practices 1,000 shots a day without ever getting tired. That jolt brings back Haru's memory of his first middle school match when he barely played a few minutes, got benched, and never started until now. The next day, Sura walks into the club room and finds Chiaki soaking in a makeshift shower basket. Sura just ignores it and cleans the room. Then Chiaki asks, "What reason could there possibly be for a loser like me to even play basketball?" Sura fires back that training will fix that, and then Chiaki takes him to Haru's training area. Sura is shocked. He always thought he hated basketball until Chiaki explains that everyone has a breaking point in life. He even tells him about some idiot who shoots 1,000 baskets every day without ever getting tired. Haru mostly missed his shots, but he once jumped so high to score a basket that even though he still didn't score, it left everyone stunned. That got Sura's curiosity going, so he rushed over to chat with him. But the drama didn't stop there. Right behind them, a bunch of wing players from Maru High showed up, back for revenge and to mock Haru's pathetic basketball skills. Haru lost it, grabbed one of them, but they outnumbered him, and one of them even swung an iron bat at Haru. Then, out of nowhere, a basketball smacked that guy and sent him reeling. Yep, that ball was courtesy of Sura. He jumped into the fray, but ended up getting the floor wiped with him, and because of all the screeching, Sura now has a busted ear and can't hear so well. He didn't even catch Haru complaining about how he was a total failure at shooting and never got to play as a starter. Sura then asks Haru to show him that dazzling jump and describe what it feels like to fly. After that, they head back to the club room and are stunned to learn that Maru High has thrown down a challenge to their school in a basketball match. There's no choice. If they want to save their rep, they have to play this match. But first, they need to practice. Their initial enthusiasm fizzles a bit after they bomb the simplest drills, so they bail out. In reality, they left because the girls were laughing at them. Sura chases after them, trying to convince them to practice, and they finally agree, but only on one brutal condition. Sura must play basketball in the club wearing nothing but his underwear. And not just that he must play in front of the girls looking like a total spaz. A harsh condition indeed, but Sura will do anything to win them over. He accepts the deal, even though he ends up running around the gym stark naked, forcing them in the end to pick a basketball player. The very next day, Sura and Haru head over to Maru High to check out the level of their players. Sura hangs back to observe until one of the players, a guy named Tokigawa, invites him in to get a closer look. Once inside, Sura finds a massive dude named Chiba dazzling on the court. Chiba had already picked certain players, and Sura was one of them. Sura figured he was from Maru High, but they didn't select him to play. They only picked the tall ones. Anyone under 1.70 meters was out. This was a game for giants only. Sura couldn't help himself. He snatched the ball from Chiba with lightning stealth and raced to score, but Tokigawa tried to block him. Then Sura pulled off a slick double-back move that was both terrifyingly fast and smooth, scoring the basket and shattering Chiba's ego. After that show, Chiba realized Sura was from the high school they'd challenged, and Sura miraculously escaped. Later, Sura even sent his mom a message with a pic of him and his lovely buddies, though the photo had everything that was adorably extra. In class, Sura was busy plotting how to take down the rival team when, out of nowhere, Chiaki bursts into the classroom, apologizing for being late even though he's actually a second year in the first class. Some students couldn't help but laugh at him. School's over, and they invite Sura to join their match, but he flat out refuses because he's got a date with a girl on the same day as the game. Sura isn't about winning, he just wants to play a proper 5-on-5 match, but Chiaki isn't even into the match in the first place. He ends their chat by handing Sura a paper with a map of his classroom, asking him for the names of the folks sitting in the orange seats, the same ones who mocked him that morning, because he wants to settle some scores. That's when Sura realizes something important. Chiaki's memory is freakishly good. How does he pinpoint these people in such a short time? Training goes on, and here's the new twist. Whoever scores 3 consecutive baskets gets to pack up and go home, while the one who can't has to clean the gym. The kicker. 3 mischievous punks on the opposing side hatched a dirty scheme to beat them, hitting, spitting, and all sorts of gross tricks. Unsurprisingly, Sura wrapped up his training first. He was texting his mom with all the juicy details when Madoka barged in, assuming he was chatting with his boyfriend. Sura fibbed to his mom. He didn't mention that she was in the hospital getting treatment, saying he was just sending her progress reports. His mom, Yuke, was a killer player herself, and the only one who ever pushed him to overcome his height issues. She was short compared to the girls, but was once the top player on the national basketball team. Then came the big day. But the plan changed. Our team decided to stir up another fight with the Maru High supporters. Their players were genuinely tall, but Sura told Madoka before the match that he had a secret plan. The catch? This was Sura's first real game, and the tension was written all over his face. The match was about to kick off when Chiba noticed that Haru was actually Chiaki's younger brother. The whistle blew, and Haru leaped high, stunning everyone by grabbing the ball before Chiba could even react. The ball then went straight to Sura, who didn't even bother dribbling past the defense. He just jumped up and nailed a 3-pointer that left everyone slack-jawed. It looked like pure luck because it was the first time Sura had shot a ball like that. The same went for Haru, who also didn't expect to grab the ball from that jump. The disaster. That move was their secret plan. They had no other tricks up their sleeve. That's when Tokigawa could have swooped in, snatched the ball, and passed it to Sura. Sura got ready to shoot, but then Tokigawa blocked him. Quick on his feet, Sura recovered, darted diagonally toward the right side, and scored another basket. Chiba started freaking out. There was no way they could underestimate Sura. 10 minutes went by and the score was in our favor, but it was too close for comfort. The plan was still the same. Keep passing the ball to Sura to score while Haru manned the defense. Meanwhile, Maru High adjusted their strategy by sneaking in backdoor passes, exploiting the height gap. But Haru wasn't having it. He managed to stop them from scoring a clean basket on Chiba's watch and rebounded the ball like a missile back to Sura. Sura glided past everyone, and also pulled off an awesome move as he dribbled past his marker and scored. Yet questions remained for Tokigawa. Why didn't Sura use his teammate to bypass him and take the easier route? Apparently, Tokigawa had discovered Sura's weak spot and challenged him again, but he underestimated Sura. Because Sura isn't just a shooter, he's got refined, polished skills. Still, Tokigawa kept hustling along the sidelines and ended up with no choice but to take a shot. The surprise. For the first time, he couldn't score. Something was off. He still had the ball, but Tokigawa kept shuffling it on the sidelines. Yep, he dragged it to the part of the court Sura hates, the left side. A deadly weak spot for Sura, from which he'd never be able to shoot and score again. Haru immediately grabbed the loose ball to try to fix this, but his dumb teammates started blaming him for not scoring even though he was carrying the whole team on his back. On another note, Chiaki was having a blast because that girl had shown up just as he'd planned. Actually, she wasn't even there to see Chiaki. She wanted him to come with her to Maru High to watch the match because, simply put, she's a huge fan of Tokigawa. That guy had managed to create a perfect shot for Chiba and even scored despite Haru's rock-solid defense, which, by the way, led to a free throw because of one of Haru's mistakes. The gap in the score just kept widening, and Sura was struggling to overcome his disadvantage in height and skill. There's no greater insult to Sura than that. On top of everything, Chiaki showed up to watch the game not really for the match, but to catch a glimpse of Tokigawa. Meanwhile, Yasuo racked up 4 fouls, and a 5th would get him ejected, forcing his team to play with only 4 players because they had no substitutes. And Chiba took a timeout to yell at his teammates, warning them not to pull any shady stunts just to draw a foul since they didn't have a 6th player to replace anyone. Sora was set to play 4-on-5 and wasn't backing down. Promises require hustle, but unfortunately, reality hit hard. A 44-point deficit was locked in at halftime. During the 3rd timeout, Sora stepped out to grab some cold drinks. Meanwhile, the guys noticed Chiaki hanging above them, but Haru figured there was no point in joining in because back in middle school, there was a similar match, and during the first half, Chiaki had given up and gone out for ice cream. Outside, Sora was dealing with cramped arm muscles from overuse, a real bummer since he shoots with his right hand, which risked ruining all his hard-earned training. The 3rd period kicked off with the opposing team scoring first, but Sura switched tactics to play one-handed. The opponents, noticing his tired arm, piled on the defense. What was Sura to do? He remembered his training sessions with his mom and how she taught him a shooting technique that eased the strain on his arms shooting with both hands. Sura thought that sounded a bit girly, but hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. He pulled it off perfectly and scored a 3-pointer, finally overcoming his notorious shooting weakness on the edges. Immediately, the opposing team ramped up their pressure, setting 3 defenders on him. Miraculously, Haru took control of the ball, fighting like a madman, and Sura did his best to follow suit. The opponents kept up the pressure until Sura's legs felt like jelly. Up above, Chiaki got so fed up with watching that he decided to leave, but Madoka chased after him because she didn't want to play and was seriously bummed about her teammates getting mocked. Still, Madoka wouldn't dare make fun of someone who's giving it his all to reach his goal. Meanwhile, the Maru High supporters up above were anything but sympathetic. They were downright pissed at our guy's desperate moves, so they hatched a dirty plan, chucking a drink bottle right into the middle of the court. Sura stepped on it and fell flat on his face. That was crossing the line. Pressure from below, pressure from above wasn't that enough. There were only 5 minutes left with the score still massively behind. Amid all the bickering and shouting, Chiaki made a dramatic entrance back into the gym. He came in and slammed a table onto the crowd, proclaiming, "Whoever doesn't fight has no right to laugh at those who are struggling. No matter how miserable Chiaki gets, he's got plenty of time to overcome it." He decided he'd play as the 5th man on the team, but he asked Sura if he even knew his role on the court. Sura floored him with his answer. He was going to be the playmaker who'd dictate the entire offense. After all, he was the one who'd arranged the seating and decided every student's position in his class. Who knows what they'd do in the final 5 minutes? Total chaos. Because, surprise, disaster struck. Chiaki completely forgot the rules of basketball and just committed a foul. It was the dreaded 8-second rule. The attacking team has to cross into the other half before 8 seconds tick by. The game kept going with Tokigawa clutching the ball, but Chiaki was hot on his heels. Tokigawa barely managed to toss the ball backward when Chiaki predicted his move and snatched it away, charging for the basket. The defender in his path was totally confused about Chiaki's next move, pass or shoot. And then, out of the blue, Chiaki pulled off a slick elbow pass behind him. Somehow, Nabi managed to score from that play. That move was enough to send the opposing team into a panic because Chiaki isn't your average player. He's got those ruthless elbow passes that almost ripped Tokigawa's head off. Chiaki kept advancing, but the defense was way too tight in front of him. They eventually knocked the ball to the floor and it bounced towards Sura. "This guy is a genius, don't mess with him." Chiba then claimed the score had been 0-0 ever since Chiaki entered, and from there, the real match between them began. With only 30 seconds left and it seeming impossible for the opposition to win, they still tried to scrape together one final point. The opponents realized the plan and wouldn't let such a moral defeat happen. They started stalling for time. Tokigawa attempted to break past Chiaki once more, but Chiaki put him in his place by swiping the ball. It went back to the opponents because of a foul, and they tried to shoot, but the ball clanged off the rim. It looked like it would bounce inside their court, but Sura, full of confidence, charged with everything he had toward the other side, sure that Haru would snatch the ball and end the challenge. And yes, his confidence was well placed. He swiped the ball from Chiba so that Chiaki could act as the connector between him and the ball. Then Chiaki lobbed it at Sura, who caught it and fired it into the basket. There was a split second before the shot went down, and time ran out. The basket didn't count because the buzzer had sounded. Still, it had been one hell of a match, burning with intensity and ending almost in a tie. After the game, the players shook hands and Sura asked Shiba to reconsider those students they'd booted out of the club. Shiba explained that in basketball height is king, so as a favor, he'd kick them out so they wouldn't waste 3 years of their lives. Sura was actually happy about it because if they really wanted to play ball, they'd be back in no time. That day ended with Sura collapsing and passing out, and Madoka ended up carrying him home only to discover he was at his grandma's place. His grandma started telling him a story about his mom, saying she hadn't wanted to see them ever since she got admitted to the hospital. She refused to have visitors because she'd get hounded every day and on every holiday, and that would totally mess up her basketball training. Still, Sura was stubborn enough to enroll at Kozo High, the same high school in the city where the hospital is located. Of course, his mom, Yuka, knew he was in the same city and asked if, once he wins the national championship, he'd come see her again. And from then on, he moved into his grandma's house so he could attend that high school. Speaking of which, he woke up the next morning, clearly itching to go out and shoot some hoops like always, but Madoka wouldn't let him because it was late. Still, the next day was a holiday, and Sura was seen sprinting around the city at dawn until he finally reached the gym. It wasn't long before the guys showed up to practice. They were pissed off about the previous night's loss. They headed to the other court set up for basketball, but it turned out the court was reserved for other clubs. Even worse, they couldn't even register their turn without appointing someone as their club manager. Haru was given the job of talking to the director to sort that out. After wrapping up, he headed back to the club room and saw his brother playing a ridiculous duck game he'd snatched from behind a grocery store. The director eventually agreed to appoint a supervisor, but only on the condition that if they started a fight or caused any trouble, the team would be disbanded immediately. Meanwhile, some of our guys noticed a seriously skilled player training alone. Yasuo approached him for a chat, and the guy started dribbling like he was dancing. Out of nowhere, he threw a punch. This kid, who goes by Toby, wasn't done there. He kept punching everyone one by one until it was Yasuo's turn. Being a high-ranking karate expert, Yasuo was suddenly tackled from behind by Haru. Up until that moment, he hadn't even mentioned the director's condition to his teammates. Because of that, he decided not to fight and just leave. But Toby wasn't having any of it. He lunged forward in a single bound and kicked Haru right in the face. The crazy part? Haru blocked that kick by headbutting, and the sheer force from both sides just canceled out. After that display, Haru noticed someone had caught up with him in one epic jump, and the way he kicked told you exactly how much power he'd put into it. They huddled in the club room to discuss it, then headed back to the gym. They were all shocked to see a guy partying and fooling around without any respect for anyone. Sura tried to put a stop to it, but the guy dodged the ball with such slick moves and jumped to shoot only to keep flying until he crashed right into a girl in front of him. Luckily, it was just a minor concussion, and she'd be fine. But what wasn't fine was the state of the basketball club. This whole fiasco was about to ruin all their plans and tear the team apart. That evening, Sura found Toby roaming around the club searching for the ball. Sura tried to get close and invite him to join their basketball game, but Toby punched him right in the face. Sura didn't care. He told Toby to apologize to the girl, Yoshino, whom he'd accidentally hurt. Toby ignored him and left. The very next day, Toby kept on causing trouble, and soon they found him lying on the ground, surrounded by his teammates after he'd beaten them up. Sura stepped in to find out why Toby was acting out and why he was messing up their plans at such a critical moment. He couldn't even finish his sentence before Madoka stormed in and slapped Toby across the face, telling him that if he wanted to play basketball, he had to follow at least the basic rules, and if he couldn't, then he should just quit. In the midst of all this chaos, their so-called supervisor, Satoki, burst in and, without any introductions, disbanded the entire basketball club. Then, in the middle of his scolding, Toby's phone rang, and with a cheeky grin, he answered it, which infuriated Sura so much he hurled the phone away. Toby nearly smashed Sura's head, but the supervisor stepped in to stop him. Toby then admitted that he wasn't even officially part of the basketball club, it was just a solo act, and then he left, taking all the blame. Crisis averted. Later on, Sura heard the same ringtone he'd heard earlier and trailed Toby. He found Toby chatting with his little sister. You know how she always makes calls from public phones, and promising her that he'd see her at the national championship in the summer. After ending the call, Sura appeared behind him and tried to convince him to rejoin the basketball team. Tired of words, Toby decided to let his actions speak by challenging Sura right then and there to show him his true worth. He drew a big circle and declared, "We'll all be inside here and you have to take the ball from me if you want to win this challenge." But that was no easy task, for Sura Toby had some seriously high-level dribbling skills, and until that moment, Sura hadn't even managed to get a hold of the ball. The kids gathered around and started cheering Sura on. Then Toby got sidetracked rambling about memories of his dad, the same dad who gave him his very first real basketball on his birthday. That memory snapped Sura out of it. He snatched the ball from Toby and ended the challenge right there in front of Supervisor Satoki. It was decided that Toby would be kicked out of that high school, but then Yaso appeared from behind and demanded that the supervisor get all the details of the incident. A third-year kid named Nishaki told Toby to drop the ball and join their wing team, or else they'd beat him up, and that was the turning point. Toby started swinging and hitting them, but soon the injuries they suffered in that brawl were too serious to ignore. Sayu did what he had to do to settle the score with Toby, who later regretted kicking that beloved basketball of his. Turns out that ball was a birthday gift from his late dad, who died while working on a construction site. Back to Sura. He decided to follow the supervisor, hoping to change his mind. He trailed him through the teacher's room, the classroom, and even the bathrooms, trying every trick in the book to persuade him until Toby came in and asked the supervisor to cancel his expulsion. In exchange, Toby promised he'd make the school famous with a kick-ass basketball team, and as their mentor, he'd score a ton of perks by leading the Kozo High squad to the national championship. Oddly enough, the supervisor finally changed his mind, probably because he'd had enough of idiots, and more importantly, because he wanted to keep his promise to his sister Shuri. The problem now was that the supervisor didn't exactly have the authority to cancel the decision. Then from the side, another voice was heard. It turned out to be the director, who'd been eavesdropping on the whole conversation and was now going to reconsider expelling Toby. It was settled. Toby showed up for his first days of training with the team, and they started swapping expert tips, though I'm not even sure the guys had any. The day ended, but not on a high note. Nishaki singled out Toby, pummeling him for revenge. Toby, however, barely reacted, sticking to his promise not to stir up any more trouble. Then, from behind, the teammates tried offering help, but Toby refused, determined to take full responsibility for his actions without even a hint of a move, until the supervisor finally came in from behind and broke up the fight. All ended peacefully. Almost. There was still one thing left. Toby needed to apologize to the girl he hurt. But it turned out there was no need because the girl was actually close to him, apparently his girlfriend. Afterwards, they got serious about training. Sura began teaching Toby how to shoot, while Toby showed him how to dribble and pass with lightning speed. Still, that wasn't enough, and since the supervisor wasn't really a sports expert, they had to find a proper coach who could handle the responsibility of the team. Training ended that day with the supervisor handing them the preliminary stage for the national championship, but they couldn't catch it. Still, they decided to go for gold and watch the early rounds of the other team. They finally reached the last match of the day, and it turned out one of the teams was Maru High, trailing by 9 points and with the clock ticking down. Maru High took a timeout, and Shiba managed to fire up his team again, leading to an absolutely stellar performance and a well-deserved win. Kozo High was clearly in a whole different league compared to Maru High. But in the end, it meant that our guys wouldn't make it to the district qualifiers unless they managed to beat Maru High. It was pretty much decided, but one thing was clear. They had to train. During the very next training session, there was a loud ripping sound from Sura's foot. It turned out his sneaker had torn. The news spread like wildfire through the city, with every shop telling him to buy a new one instead of fixing it. In the end, only one shop was left. Sura marched in and asked about the owner, but instead of a normal greeting, he only heard the sound of a girl screaming on the stairs. He rushed over, found her, and heroically rescued her from what could have been a serious injury. Her name was Neo, and she was a classmate from another class. She begged him to hold off on fixing his sneaker until her dad arrived, but after a quick glance, she decided it'd be better to just get a new pair. Then she offered him some advice. If he really wanted to fix it, he should just modify it by changing the sole, because Sura's style is all about speed, and that tweak would give him a real edge. Fixing it would take about 10 days, so Neo lent him the pair she was using until then. Neo already knew what made Sura special. She'd seen his performance in that last challenge against Maru High. Her smiles were obvious, which meant Sura was slowly getting sucked into the whirlpool of love. Now he had to choose between her and Madoka. The very next day, Sura was late for practice because he had spent the entire night thinking about Neo. When he finally showed up, he was surprised to see Chiaki waiting for him, a total break from the norm. And yeah, that was because a new coach had joined the team, and guess what? It turned out to be Neo. This led Toby to ask why she'd come since she was supposed to be the coach for the basketball team. Neo shot a look at Sura, and Chiaki completely misread the situation, letting his overactive imagination run wild. Not only Chiaki, but every guy there suddenly pulled out their best moves to show off for her. One by one, they took turns dazzling and performing their signature moves. Then Madoka showed up to check things out, and it turned out she'd known Nayo back in middle school. She used to coach the girls' basketball team. The guys kept playing, all the while eavesdropping on the conversation between Nayo and Madoka about how she believed this team couldn't possibly win a real match. Her words hit them like nails, and Toby wasn't about to accept that verdict just from seeing them do a little practice. But Madoka defended Nayo, insisting that what she said was spot on, and to prove it, they'd have a match against the girls' team. The catch? The girls were freaked out because they knew they were up against a bunch of perverted losers, and they'd be forced to endure the boys' unwanted advances. Toby mocked them for having lost the first round of the qualifiers. How on earth were they supposed to stand up to them? For the boys, winning or losing didn't even matter. What mattered was proving that Nayo was right. The guys weren't too happy with that because it wasn't a fair contest, plus, winning and losing wasn't really a big deal to them. But they'd agree to play if the girls accepted one brutal condition. If they lost, the loser had to strip. And get this, if Sura's team lost, Madoka would have to strip too. That challenge got the boys totally hyped, and maybe they'd even win the national championship on that vibe. So, the match was set to begin between the boys' basketball team and the girls' team, with the loser, no matter which side, having to strip. And here's the other condition. Smash that like button on this video, or on the clip that just played, which might even be part 2 if it gets uploaded. Subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next video because the continuation is going to be insanely wild. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.